Alrighty, I think we're good. Over to you, Aditya.
So, hi guys. So, like I was saying, in the WhatsApp group, when Tarun had asked for suggestions for what we could discuss, I had put a few suggestions, and one of them was discussing what emotional intelligence means to all of us. Uh, this topic came to me because of many reasons, but some of them would be that I feel like we have a good grasp on what IQ looks like, what does intelligence look like, the ability to model, make good maps of the world, manipulate abstractions and things like that. Like we have an idea of a nerdy guy, the person who's very smart. But when it comes to emotional intelligence, EQ, I have met a few people in my life who are very charming, very charismatic, people who have a good touch of the pulse of the crowd. So I have certain ideas around what it looks like when someone is very high EQ, or also someone who's very low EQ, maybe, who hurts other people with ignorance and they don't seem to understand. So I have my own notions of what EQ looks like. And I wanted to ask other people what they think, what high EQ, low EQ looks like, but what does emotional intelligence even mean? And maybe if you have time, we can also discuss how, in your own journey, in your own life, you have managed to improve your EQ, or whether it's even something you want to work on. Are you like, I'm just happy the way I am? So I wanted to have a discussion around that sort of a thing. So I think
Yeah,
we'll go with one round with everyone explaining their own perception of what they think. Uh, a prototypical example of what high EQ looks like or low EQ looks like, or whatever way they want to present their understanding. That looks good.
yeah, that sounds good. Who wants to go first? I can go. It's fine. So for me, I think EQ is about um being able to read the room. Like you said, right? The pulse of a room. Try to understand what the vibes are and kind of adapt to it, or maybe even manipulate it uh, to kind of uh, get what you want. That can mean charisma, that can mean charm, whatever. But for me, that's what it is. And being able to kind of uh, read a person's emotional state, I would say. If it is in a group, then the vibe of the room, I would say, in a social setting. But if it is one on one, like trying to understand, having empathy, trying to be able to sense the subtext and what is going underneath the words rather than just the words themselves. I think high IQ people will take some things like literally, like they can parse statements and understand it very well. For me, on the other side of the spectrum, EQ would be uh, people who can understand subtext in people's communication. For me, yeah, that's what it is.
Okay.
Um,
Anyone else wants to go next?
Tarun, you didn't leave much.
sorry.
No, you summarized it very well, so I don't know what is left to say in a way. I mean, at least for me. Uh, but yeah, I'll just add that for me, it's like
Okay.
I mean, when I think about EQ, I think about okay, someone being empathetic or having empathy, and like that makes a difference. Uh, or I somehow I associate EQ with empathy. Yeah, and from there we see all these other aspects of reading the emotional state of a group or a person, and all these things come from there. Uh, but yeah, I just associate with someone who is very empathetic, goes beyond what is on the surface of what someone is saying or why someone is saying. And yeah, yeah, sorry, my network is not so great, so I'll just stop at this. I'll let others pick up from there.
No, I think, yeah, we heard most of what you said, Shrikant. Yeah, definitely. I think Avantika has something to say. Right? Go ahead.
Hi everyone. Like Shrikant mentioned, Tarun has covered lot of points. One point that I would like to add from my end here is many a times when we are in some crucial conversation, the person whom we are talking to, we might have lot of positive and negative emotions with respect to that person. But what is important to have a high emotional quotient is before we start the conversation, we take some time, we process those emotions, and only then enter into the conversation so that we are not driven by the emotion but by the fact and the agenda that is required to be discussed. Yeah, thank you.
So
Got it.
yeah, so I just want to add. So as Tarun Srikanth mentioned, I feel emotion. I mean, like EQ is totally based on empathy, like being empathetic to others' feelings. So that is what I feel. And as Srikanth said, Tarun covered everything here. So, like what I feel is being empathetic is most crucial in the room, and not just in a room of a group of people, but I also feel being empathetic towards uh, like I mean, being empathetic is the key point for for the emotion for the EQ.
Yeah,
Like I think Avantika kind of brought up like taking a step back in like emotionally charged situations as well, right? That's I think one more aspect, right? Like emotional regulation in terms of not letting your emotions completely drive you, but maintaining your cool composure in really hot button situations and kind of bringing down the um, emotional intensity of a situation, I would say, maybe. Like, what do you guys think?
yeah. Uh, I want to add an extra point. So I think um, there's also this meta level processing where you also you're not modeling the other person, but you're modeling what they perceive of you, and uh, that's also adds a lot to emotional intelligence. And I think a lot of charisma comes. I mean, it can be it's sort of a double-edged sword because if you are really good at that, then you can yeah, you can have your way out, right? Like you can you know exactly what to do or say to have this impression on other person, people, etc. And a lot of charisma comes from there, like having a very accurate model of what other people think of you and when to show what side of you, um, how to portray yourself. So
Right,
yeah, that's
right,
also comes under uh, emotional intelligence. But also regarding empathy, even here, I think with more emotional intelligent people, they have a judgment on when to use the empathy because if you're just applying it like blindly, people can easily manipulate you. Like, oh, you're so empathetic, you can just you just fall for whatever others say, right? Like, so I think if you have like good emotional intelligence, you also know when you like where to put a stop to that empathy because if not, being too empathetic can also be detrimental to you. Like any,
right.
yeah, like do you guys feel the same or do you guys think having a lot of empathy is good?
Yeah, I mean that's very interesting because I also think about it a lot. Whether having high empathy is always a good thing. I think there are two things, right? It's whether you have empathy. Like I don't equate empathy to being nice or polite or anything, right? Empathy is just being able to understand another person's perspective. Uh, but if you are smart enough and strong enough or have the self confidence, I don't think you will get manipulated, right? Like you will know where to draw the line and say, yeah, I'm going to draw a boundary and I'm not going to let this person who you feel is being manipulative change or manipulate you, right? Yeah, go ahead, Shrikant.
Yeah, I don't know if it's audible, but yeah, no, just to add to what uh, he was saying, I think in some ways, when you're empathetic, you knowingly or unknowingly, you end up being a bit vulnerable, is what I feel. Like it's. I mean, we would like to be aware and not be manipulated or whatever it may be, but somehow I think when you're really being empathetic, when you're really feeling what the other person is feeling, or whether they're manipulating or they're genuinely feeling whatever, but there is some element of vulnerability there, which invariably means we are uh, in a state where we can be manipulated. So I can totally see what he was saying about knowing where to draw the line, or being aware of this and regulating our emotions in some ways, or knowing when to rein ourselves back in
Yeah.
some
Right.
ways. Yeah, but that's a good point. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. 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 Go ahead, Avantika.
Hey Tarun, I want to add one more point to the previous point that you said, not the last one.
Hmm.
So, when we are highly emotionally charged, it's always better to ask for a timeout rather than saying something that we regret later on under the influence of that emotional state. So, we can practice some grounding techniques quickly and then come back to the conversation.
Right. Right. Yeah, but do you think that's always practical? Do you think that's always possible to say, yeah, I need some time to like um, cool down, collect my thoughts, and then come back? I
So,
feel like sometimes that's just not possible, right?
So there are three situations. At sometimes it might definitely be possible. At
Hmm.
sometimes it might definitely be not possible. And in the middle ground, what you can do is don't tell directly, but try to make a little bit of other side excuse which is more acceptable in the situation and do what you want to do in that time.
Hmm. Right. So, but let's say, what what do you think we can do if we are in a circumstance where you can't step back, you can't ground yourself, right? You have to be present in that moment and be able to give a response. Like, how would we handle such
Uh,
a
I
thing?
I think taking a pause for a moment while sitting there or while standing there, taking a deep breath, or maybe closing your eyes for 5 seconds. I think these are the things that most of the situations would allow us. And a
Hmm.
break, even of this short while, it helps a bit. Obviously, it will not be as good as taking a 10 minutes break, but we can also try and say, okay, let me take a sip of water and cool myself down. Seldom people would deny a water break of 2 minutes, so we have to be little creative is what I believe.
Right. So I think also you were talking about grounding techniques and stuff, right? Can you elaborate a little more? Can you go a little deeper on what those are? Because I don't think all of us are um, aware of what those are.
All right, so I'll share some of the techniques that I have learned. So,
Hmm.
what happens is the first requirement is we should identify that we need some grounding. That's the biggest deal breaker because most of the time, what happens is we are highly emotionally charged and we continue to converse and respond in a way that we regret later, and we don't realize it in the moment that we needed to take a moment of pause. So I think that's a challenge which will come only by working on ourselves and practicing. And in the initial stage, while we are not able to do it in the real time, it's a good practice to journal it, to reflect back. Okay, I was in a meeting. I didn't do the best that I would have liked to do, but I come
Hmm.
back and I journal. So I do it for the second instance, I do it for the third instance, I note down the good and bad of it, and then I find my own pattern. This is my pattern, how I react. When I am familiar with my own pattern, it becomes a bit more easier to realize it in the real time. Now if we have to ground, one technique is definitely taking a break. Go have water, change your thoughts for a moment, just think about something else so that you break your train of thoughts, and once your limbic brain becomes little more active, your cortex become little more active, your limbic brain will calm down. Limbic brain is the part of the brain which regulates your emotion, and the cortex is one which is your logical brain. So once you try utilizing your logical brain, your emotional brain kind of resets. So if we have time, one grounding technique could be just stop thinking about what is bothering you, take a break to think about something logical and unrelated, regulate and come back. Another technique might be drink water. Drinking water has been recognized as a very good tool to calm yourself down. Another thing is like there is one technique which says that just observe five things in your surroundings. So this might not again work in the meetings because you'll clearly be seen being distracted observing 10 different things. But let's say if someone else is speaking and you get a chance, and then just basically it's breaking your train of thoughts with something. So you just observe 10 other things so that you can better think about the situation at hand. Another technique to break your train of the thoughts is just feel five different textures handy. Your paper might have one texture, your pen might have another texture, the clothes that you're wearing, or a piece of jewelry that you're wearing, your watch, all these things have got different textures. So once you identify and touch and feel, let's say, five different textures, I believe this technique is also has to do something with just diverting your mind for a moment so that you can focus better. Maybe I can prepare on it and share in a better way of what the grounding techniques could be.
No, this was actually very useful. I think you did a very good job summarizing all the different techniques. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
But yeah, you're always welcome to present a more detailed version at one of our meetups.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we have two new people who joined us. Hi, Sudeep. Hi, Natasha.
Hello, Tarun.
Yeah, so we were just talking about going around the room and talking about what emotional intelligence means for us. And then the conversation kind of went into grounding techniques. How do we emotionally regulate and things like that? So, you want to share what emotional intelligence means to you?
Uh, I mean, I'll just listen for this conversation as I'm somewhere in a different place.
Sure,
I'll
sure.
contribute it.
Okay, no problem. Natasha, are you there? All right, I think she's on mute. Um, all right. What you had a couple of other questions, right, Aditya? You want to go through them?
Yeah, I think I should also give you guys what I think emotional intelligence means.
Yeah, right.
So I found it very interesting how after Tarun gave his explanation, everyone was saying things like, "Oh yeah, like Tarun already said everything," but then they also add very interesting points which I was noting down because I was like, Tarun kind of talked about noticing the vibes, manipulating the vibes, being able to read a person's emotional state, and not just the explicit statements, but the implicit hidden meaning, the subtext behind people's speech. And then I think it was Srikant who talked about empathy and about theory of mind, being able to model why someone is saying something they're saying, right? And I found that to be very interesting. Like, yeah, that's part of emotional intelligence for sure. And Avantika then talked about the emotional regulation thing, which later Tarun also was like, yeah, I agree, it's important. So I think overall, like as a kind of like a sort of overview, empathy definitely came up many times. The ability to have mirror neurons which fire in your brain when you see someone else doing something. You're like, okay, I can not just intellectually understand why they're doing something, but also emotionally implicitly feel it. So that's a difference between IQ and EQ, I would say, where in IQ you can sort of maybe theoretically say that yes, pain is something like this and this person is in pain. It's more like sympathy. While In empathy, you are being able to walk in the person's shoes. And people with high EQ tend to have empathy because a lot of what happens around us is high dimensional, very difficult to linearly write logically what's going on. You need to be able to do system one kind of thinking. So yeah, empathy is one thing that I agree with. EQ is important. Then what Bhishma talked about, the idea of recursive modeling, where it's not just gotta be able to model people, not just other people, but also ourselves, right? Like what motivates me, what are my values, what are the real reasons why I'm doing something. So I think high EQ people have a better grasp of their own model of themselves. Self-awareness is high, and they also can model other people and on different levels. It's like I know why Tarun is feeling something. That's one level. Then I can also kind of model Tarun's model of me, then Tarun's model of my model of Tarun. It can go like level one, level two, level three, and multiple levels like that. So the theory of mind is also very powerful and useful. So yeah, I think then the emotional regulation thing, which is the idea of not disrupting the agenda. I think it was uh, Avantika who talked about the focusing on the agenda and not letting emotions just make you act as a reactionary kind of way. If someone attacks me and immediately lash out, a low emotional intelligence person lets the emotion act through me as a conduct, where a high emotional intelligent person can ideally pause, slow down, and notice what information the emotion is telling me and decide in a more mature way how I want to react to a situation instead of letting the emotions take charge. I can take charge, and I am the master. So I think, yeah, I think that kind of completes all of the points that you guys are all kind of covered everything. I think now everyone has been covered. That's the what emotional intelligence means for me. And other questions I had was, oh yeah, Bhishma, you had a point.
Yeah, just for the regulation part, I'm not sure like always regulating is good as well, right? Like for at least for me as well, like I suffer from over-regulation where I don't show my emotions like at times where I have to. So I think like I'm kind of wary or um like it's hard for to make very general statements because some people might need less of something and some people might need more of something. So uh, it's better to see where you stand and then like apply. Do you have to do less or more of rather than like saying regulation is needed in general. Uh,
I think
That's
there's
a
a
great point,
distinction.
actually. Can I just
Yeah.
add one? Yeah, it's like I completely understand, resonate with overregulation because sometimes people just assume I don't feel emotions. When I do, I just regulate them a little better, or maybe overregulate them. So it's like people, oh, you're not emotional at all. You're like so cold. I'm like, okay, fine. If that's what people think, maybe I should be a little more emotional, show my emotions a little more. So yeah, that's a great point. I resonate very deeply with that. Go
I
ahead.
think
Yeah.
for
Yeah, sure. So Shweta,
I
yeah.
think for yes, yes. So I think for regulation, I think we have to seek help from others. So if you see, like maybe we may not understand like how emotional we are, like or how emotional or like how we are communicating, but the people around us can make us understand like how we are, how emotional we are or how we are able to communicate. So I think we can seek help from others. I think this is like we can regulate our emotions using like by seeking help. So this is one thing I just want to add.
Cool. Yeah.
The point I was going to say was that, yeah, I think I understand what Tarun and Bhishma was saying, because most of us, at least in my personal history, I've also gone through the case of over regulating, if you can call it that way, where I would but the distinction here I would like to draw is that imagine someone takes my phone and drops it into a by mistake or on purpose, whatever, drops it into a puddle of water. Now, the first state would be me feeling anger or reacting emotionally. So the stage at which at least I used to operate of over regulating is not allowing myself to even feel the anger, because rationalize it by saying, my friend did not mean to destroy my phone. It was an accident. I should not get angry and shout at him. That is a very immature thing to do. Therefore, I did not even feel the anger. So the healthy, emotionally mature thing to do here is not to stop it there, but you have to feel the emotion. The regulation happens after you feel and how you choose to communicate that anger to someone. Like, you don't have to always shout at them or beat them up. You can calmly let them know that, hey, it is not cool of you to be careless with my possession. You should be more careful. You can be very calm, gentle, and with love and vulnerability communicate your emotions with people. And that is where I am now working on. Before, I used to think that being mature was not even allowing myself to feel irrational emotions. But I think that is not a regulation. That's still unhealthy. Not even your body is still remembering that pent up emotions of jealousy, desire, anger, whatever it is. But so that's a very different sort of a thing, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely deeply resonate with what you said. It's like just skip the anger phase and go to the understanding phase, right? Like you're not feeling that for even like couple of seconds. Like you over understand, over have higher empathy in a sense, and say, yeah, I understand why that happened, why you did that. You're like, yeah, okay, fine, makes sense from his perspective, and maybe you're doing a disservice to yourself by not
Exactly.
communicating that anger,
You should love yourself also. You should pay attention to how you actually feel. Even if it
right?
feels irrational, you do feel a bit hurt. You're like, I like that phone of mine, like, why do you do that? So yeah, I think Nat had something to say.
Yes, yes. Hi, I'm Natasha,
uh,
by the way. So yeah, so I was listening to about the conversation on emotional regulation, right? So I I was thinking about how emotional regulation is actually can be broken down into two parts. Like the first part is being able to understand your emotions, and the second part is expressing it in a positive manner, right? So I think I completely agree about the expressing part that it may take a while to get a grip on it. But then the first part which comes in, that is understanding the emotions, is the more complex part, I would say. Especially things like the scenario that you just described, right? About maybe somebody breaking your phone. So that is a complex emotion because it's a mixture of anger. It may be a anger mixed with mixed with disappointment, mixed with sadness, hurt, and things like that. So if we are able to, I think, understand that or the range of emotions that we are going through, then expression of those emotions in a positive manner becomes easier. So yeah, so when I'm talking about emotional regulation, I would look at it in that way, I feel. Yeah.
I would further like to add a point. While I was talking, maybe I had this more of professional conversation in mind in a meeting kind of setup. What I believe is sticking to agenda in such situations and let not emotion regulate our tone and the choice of words is a better approach at that given the point of time. And if required, we can go think over. It's like taking a pause and thinking again when we are a little more calm, and then continue that conversation. The entire room full of so many stakeholders might not need to be a party in resolving those emotions, and it can be taken up with the relevant person on one or a smaller group for further discussion and resolving the issues in those lines.
yeah, I think both make sense to me.
Yeah, another important piece that I think you briefly touched upon, Aditya, was about self awareness, right? That self awareness is a major part of emotional intelligence. Now, self awareness again is a lot more complex. I think if we are kind of self aware, then the other pieces like empathy, then being able to regulate emotions and being able to express it in our relationship with others, these three components, again, I mean, self awareness is the base or the building block of all these. So for example, I mean, when we as children, I mean, the first step of self awareness that a child would take is being as simple as being able to recognize himself or herself in the mirror. That is the first step of self awareness that it starts with, right? And then it goes on perhaps to uh, being able to understand what others think of me, or what are my hidden spots. Like if I can take the model of the Johari window and put it here, then like being able to understand all of that, and then going ahead and being able to empathize, is kind of is like being empathetic or being able to regulate emotions. All these are outputs, I would say, of the building block of self awareness. So I don't know if that is too theoretical, but yeah, I mean, what I understood from like life skills was that it would be the self awareness would be the building block, and empathy, regulation, or being able to like convert have a conversation with others about emotions is will draw from our own self awareness. So yeah.
When you say the word understand, what do you mean? Like, do you have a? Can you give me example of what understanding would look like? Like, is it more like explicitly understanding, implicitly understanding, or
Understanding of emotions, you mean?
yeah, yeah. Like, I think I'm still thinking about the understanding of emotions point you had raised, and I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to see, does it mean like an intellectual understanding of emotions, or how would it look like if someone had understood the emotions?
So, I mean, if I would look at a child, right, if I would look at it from a child development point of view, then I would say that when a child, say, feels hungry, or when a child, I mean, is not able to do something with a toy that he or she wants to, they would just scream, right? Because they are not able to understand what they're feeling at that point in time, or it may be like that ability to regulate, right? That okay, this I can solve it in this manner. That is not there. Like if I'm say hungry, then and I'm talking about about a child who is able to speak. For example, a child who's able to like around 3 years old or something like that. Then they would, if they're hungry, they would just get cranky. They would cry and things like that. And even as adults, we do that at particular points in time, right? We may not understand why we are cranky, but it's just as simple as the fact that we are feeling hungry at that point in time. So then understanding that that is what we are feeling is what I meant. That okay, my crankiness is stemming from this, the fact that I'm hungry at this point in time. So I meant something like that, yeah.
I guess you're trying to say more about recognizing where the emotion is stemming from. If I can
Yeah,
Yeah,
summarize.
yeah. And
I
what
think
kind of an
from
emotion am I feeling also? I mean, hunger is a physical need, but still, like, what kind of an emotion I'm feeling at this point in time? Like, if I take the example of the phone breaking, then I mean, what am I feeling exactly? If I would just, scream and shout or get angry at that person, but it's also the fact that I may be sad, I may be hurt, I may be thinking that, this was uncalled for, or I may also feel that, oh, now I have to go ahead and get another phone, which may be expensive for me. All of these things come into the picture, right? So, I mean, we are able to regulate emotions better. I think, I personally think, if we are able to see that okay, this is a solution to this problem that I'm facing, and perhaps that would help us regulate emotions better, is what I feel. Maybe.
the Bhishma, you had something to say?
Yeah, to add to what Natasha was saying, I think uh, what my understanding and what I've noticed is like um, it's an ability to kind of separate your emotions from your actions. Because if you're not regulated, or you're just um, like as she pointed out, like a child, like the emotion and action are very intertwined. Like it's just that when they feel something, they just do it. There's no separation. But the critical part that happens once you mature is that, oh, I feel this, uh, and that is valid. But what is not valid or not appropriate is how I act in that situation. So trying to separate it and seeing when certain things are appropriate would would show that maturity and growth in a person. Is that right, Natasha? Like,
Yeah, definitely. And that's why, like, as adults, when we are, like, say, not able to, like, if somebody has, say, for example, anger issues, right? Then one of
mm,
the pieces that is advised is journaling, right? So that is just a way of understanding what you're feeling at that point in time instead of resorting to anger, for example. So yeah, so what you said was absolutely right, Vishnu. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a very insightful way to put it, Bhishma. Like separating the action from the emotion, right? I think that's a very nice way to put it. I think we have one more person joining in. I think Pavni's here. Hi, Pavni.
Hey, what's up, guys?
So just to give you like a context and summary of what's happened so far. Uh, so we all spoke about what emotional intelligence means to us. Then we spoke about self-awareness, having empathy, emotional regulation, and that's where we're at. We were talking about what emotional regulation looks like. And I think you got Bhishma's point on how, and Natasha's point, of course, where one, you first recognize the emotion and then you separate it from the action, right? Those are two separate things. Um, I think Bhishma's point is as we mature, we need to kind of separate the action from our emotions, what we are feeling from actions, and kind of take a step back. And that is emotional regulation. Um, so, do you want to give us your take on what emotional intelligence means to you?
Sure.
Uh,
I kind of I was just reading the thread of messages on WhatsApp, right? Kind of agree with all of you where the first thing is not to brush them under the carpet and just I have learned this the hard way that you need to label your feelings. Reactions are need to be separated, just like how Bhishma said. Um, but yeah, so recognizing feelings is number one, right?
mm,
That's for me is number one, and then separating again how you react to it is very um, situation based. Me, for example, I'm in HR. There are a lot of times I'm anxious to make decisions um, at work, but I can't let them show. I'll just have to deal with it. I'll have to kind of separate, dissect why I'm feeling a certain way, and then action accordingly, right? And you are in certain situations, maybe with someone you're comfortable, someone in the family, there you can be vulnerable, express how you're feeling. So sometimes even expressing letting your feelings show is considered a sign of weakness, right? That I would like to hear from other people why how do you deal with such situation like where you know what you're feeling, you know what action needs to be taken, but you really can't show or talk about it because um, people consider it a sign of weakness, like I said.
mm. And
Can
also,
I
I
make a
wanted to
point here?
welcome. Yeah, one sec,
Hello.
sorry. Yeah. I also want to know why it's considered a weakness. Why is being emotional and uh, just wearing your emotion on your sleeve, right? Why is that considered weakness? Go ahead, Sudeep. I think you wanted to say add something.
Okay, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yep. So, see, the first and foremost point, like Pavani mentioned, how to pursue a scenario like this, where you kind of feel what people think if vulnerable. To look at this through the flip side of things, is that once we get into the system and once we are presenting ourselves to the world, we are presenting ourselves in a certain fashion. Uh, Definitely through our strengths for the starter. And in the process, when all of us have our vulnerabilities, like there's no one over here who is like, we have everything set in place. So coming to how to handle situations like this is to kind of watch people very closely. As in, there will be people, you watch people how they interact with other people's actions. How they very simple things like how they treat you, are they treating the same with others, what they talk about others behind their back, and all these kind of things. Like if somebody who does that in front of, I mean, if somebody comes and bitches about somebody else behind their back, the next person who can be might as well as be you, depending upon the give and take in the entire system. And the second thing is there is another set of people I have watched who absolutely who open up really well in a very matured tone and in a very respectful manner, and they do not really care about others' opinion. As in, people, we all live in a system where people kind of, it's a pitiful system where people kind of wants to feel superior by crushing down others, just even by words. Oh, there's something wrong. Oh, this, we thought she's like this, but she's not really that strong. So I think, we can perhaps have our way around that. So I think it's a very complex scenario, but in case if you want to deal with it, you take your time, watch the people around you, and you will definitely find some of the ones who are like really empathetic, who would perhaps listen to you a little bit more and try to be, try to put themselves into your shoes, and also try to, like secure whatever you're talking. And whatever the question which was put forward very much makes sense, because how people perceive us definitely represents their action towards us. And if people perceive us as the time people perceive us as strong and the time people perceive us as vulnerable, the action they are going to show towards us will be very different. And in this, you will always find a very small subset whose action, when they put forward at your vulnerability, would be like very empathetic, like they want to listen to you, they want to kind of help you. And for such people, if you show them your gratitude to the best, and that is when I think you will have a sustaining bunch of people for a longer period of time, maybe as a friend, maybe as a good partner, or anything of that sort. So yeah, I hope I answered a very small part of this question.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sudhir.
So I think Tarun was also asking, and even Pavani talked about why is it not acceptable to show vulnerability in public. And I think we can go around and talk about this if you want, or the other questions also, like along with this, if you have any other suggestions for how to improve emotional intelligence or in your personal life, if you guys have discovered any tricks like grounding, which Avantika talked about. I think it's a very powerful tool which even I have found to be very useful when it comes to like firefighting, like acute situations when you need to be present and mindful and be intentional in how you behave. But there's also like more chronic stuff where you have toxic relationships with your partner, family, friends, with yourself, your relationship with food, with money, where your emotions can play a role in creating addictions and dependencies. So I'm personally a lot more interested in the chronic aspects of rumination and spiraling and getting really stuck up in knots in your mental models of things where you're unable to untie those knots or let go, even though it might be years and years of suffering. So
Correct.
that's personally my interest. But yeah, I think we all have interesting questions now, and uh, if I had to maybe
One more
start the
question I
discussion,
want to
yeah.
Yeah, just one more question that I'm interested in is like if anyone has any insights into why uh, people like you, me, and Bhishma kind of overregulate in terms of moving past that, right? Like any insights into where that stems from. Very interested in that question.
Nice, nice. Oh yeah, I was
Can
gonna
you
actually
please
tweet
repeat the
about that.
question again?
Maybe I can
No, I think
give a shot.
what I just, yeah, go ahead.
I think what Tarun is trying to say is that like there are cases where people like me, Bhishma or Tarun, what we do is we instead of uh, sitting with that emotion that comes up in the moment, we move very quickly and we go to the end point. Like even if my friend breaks my mobile phone accidentally, eventually I will forgive him, and eventually, we will sort things out. But that takes a few minutes or hours or days maybe to happen. But I go and feel like it's wrong of me to be mad at my friend because I take his position. I show empathy, and I don't take my own side in this conflict. I don't like to have anger or conflict, and I personally will be the bigger person. Be like, it's fine, bro. It's okay. I understand. You made a mistake. Chill. It's okay. And now this kind of means that I did not really allow for honest dialectic to happen. So I think Tarun wanted to really dig deeper into why do some people do this sort of over regulation where we do not sit with our emotions. And yeah, I think Avantika had something to say.
Yeah,
Unless
I have.
Tarun, just to complete
No,
that,
that,
Tarun, okay, right? I was right in
yeah,
giving an
that's
explanation.
perfect.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Aditya, I have one question for you and one comment for you, Tarun. The question, Aditya, is when the behavior that you have explained, once that is all done, you have forgiven, and then, hey, buddy. So, what is your state of mind? Are you not happy somewhere and it was just an expression of all happy? And do you have some unprocessed anger that you are just ignoring? Okay, and I'll come back to you. Maybe you can think about the answer. And Tarun, for you, the comment that I had was, and I would like to understand more from you, is are you trying to suppress your emotion? Is the motivation to avoid the conflict? Are you trying to avoid the conflict?
No, I mean, I don't think so. Um, for me, it's not about I don't see the conflict. I'm like, okay, fine, it happened. Like in Aditya's example, right? Like he said, it's like eventually I'll get there, so might as well do it quicker, right? Like I know I will forgive him. I know it's I'll have to buy a new phone. There's nothing you can do about it. What's the point of I don't know if I just process the anger faster or the disappointment faster. But I don't feel a need to like show that or uh, express it because I've already moved on. Uh, like if that even makes sense. I don't think it's about avoiding conflict.
Okay, so in that case, I think I put both Aditya and Tarun up for the same question to be answered. Do you still have any issues that you observe by doing the behavior that you are doing? What troubles you still after having a kind of handling that is almost ideal?
No, I don't think I have any residual emotions after that, after the situation. For me, it's more about from the other person's perspective, am I doing the right thing? If that even makes sense. Uh, like, do I need to kind of show that anger to kind of uh, change something in the other person, or is it okay? Right?
I believe.
That I've moved on.
I believe that if you don't observe the other person taking advantage of you, you are in a perfect position already. Only
Okay.
if you see that you are being taken advantage for your too soft nature, then you need to do something about it. Else, in my personal and humble opinion, you are in a perfect place.
Aditya.
Yeah, like I mean, I think Nats, like Natasha and Pavani have their hands up. After that, I can go and answer the question.
Sure.
So, I think to answer Tarun's question, right, when he was talking about what can be a possible reason, I mean, it may be twofold, right? One is that we often associate a lot of negativity to certain emotions, which may be perhaps warranted in a particular situation and natural, right? So, if we have a very, very deep negative association with anger, and that stems from the second piece, right, which is like in our experience while growing up, whenever we have experienced or whenever we have experienced anger and expressed it in that way, then perhaps the result of that has been very, very bad, right, as a child or while growing up. So then that automatically is kind of ingrained in us in some way, that, oh, if I express anger, then perhaps the outcome of it would be maybe me losing my friend or something like that. So then that association is so deeply ingrained in us that our natural, status, or not status quo, and our natural reaction to anger may be, I should not express it. So I feel, because, like, as human beings, we are always learning, right, from our experiences, and if some of these emotions in our previous experience has produced a very negative result, then we automatically might associate it with a negative, as a negative emotion, which is not warranted or not natural at all. We may think that anger is unnatural. So then I think it kind of becomes, highly regulated, because we do not want the same situation happen to us again. So I think, yeah, that is what I think. This.
Yeah, I think that kind of makes sense, right? Like, if your brain is wired to associate that negative emotion to a negative outcome, you just want to overregulate that kind of negative emotion. Like, you're just wired in a way where you just want to like move on from that emotion. Yeah, that's a good point, Natasha. Thanks for that. I think we can go to Pavni. You're on mute, Pavni, if you're talking.
Yeah. Hey, thanks. To add to what Natasha said, I recently heard about this theory called SARA. I don't know if you guys have heard, SARA. So it's every time someone goes through something or hears a news, there are four stages that they go through. The first is shock, second is anger, third is like resignation, which is basically withdrawal, and fourth is acceptance, right? Everybody goes through these phases. How much they dwell in each of these stages is what varies, right? And that again, I think why people move on faster from one stage to another. Some people don't even get angry for like a brief few seconds, right? That's basically from the experience. Like Natasha said, maybe they don't want to process negative emotions and things like that. So they tend to accept it faster. Um, the result of this could be either it's easier because they've gone through the stages, they get over it, or sometimes people have not fully processed, they've just like quickly brushed it off. And that could have a, like Avantika said, it could leave a feeling, a bitter taste afterwards, right? Like it's piled up, it's bottled up, and at some point it's bound to come out. But if you properly processed all these stages, then maybe um, your experiences have made it such a way that it's easier for you to regulate faster, get over faster.
Yeah, I'll have to think about that a little bit. But thanks for the framework, though, Sarah. It's shock. Can you repeat the four?
Yeah, it's
Anger.
shock, anger, resignation, acceptance.
Got it. Yeah, I think I moved from anger to resignation very quickly, and acceptance actually more than resignation. It's like I feel disappointed at certain outcomes, and then I just accept it very, very quickly. Um, I don't know where that stems from, but it's just
I think Bhishma's like holding his hand up, right? You
yes,
have anything
yes.
to add?
Yeah. So at least for me, the over-regulation part, it's definitely conflict avoidance. I can see it happening a lot of times. And it's also, I think, probably because I sometimes you're not sure of your emotions and you feel expressing it might be invalidating. So to give an example of what Aditya was saying, so in this case, yeah, your friend did that, and let's say you showed some anger or um, disappointment, then your friend will be like, "Oh, what's a big deal?" Or it's just, yeah, I'll fix it. Or so there's a kind of conflict. Like so, sometimes you don't want to show the emotion because you feel others will minimize it or
Judge,
diminish its
judge,
effect.
will judge you
Yeah, they'll
basically,
judge.
right?
Yeah, exactly, judging. So you're not comfortable with uh, opening up because of the judgments and kind of diminishing effect that it has on how you feel. And because of that, you only share it with people that you trust that okay, they have your best interest. And some people, yeah, have like a hard time gaining that trust. So that would again make them uh, less vulnerable or less opening up.
Yeah, and I think it is in like a little bit of generalization as well, but men tend to express less, whereas women tend to express more. So there is some neurological reasons as well why men don't open up so quick.
Yeah, I think I can also now maybe answer the original question that Avantika had asked me and Tarun also. Yeah, I think the like in this example I was talking about where the mobile phone has been accidentally damaged by my friend and I forgive him quickly. There is no resentment. I think I could relate a lot to what Tarun was saying, where it's not like I'm holding in some anger which I'm not expressing. It doesn't exist. It really has been sorted out. But the key aspect here to remember, or which I would like to point out, is we are not having full access to our own internal states. Like, just because I'm unable to feel it does not mean I'm 100% sure I don't have it in me. Like, it took a lot of introspection for me to figure this out, where there seemed to be a case where I would not feel anything towards someone, and then suddenly it will become extreme anger. And this means that there was not a gradual increase
Build
in
up.
annoyance. Yeah. So the zero was not actually zero, it was not being noticed by my body or my mind. Like small annoyances were discarded until it became a big one, and then I was like super angry at him. I was like, what is this? Like there's two stories where he's been living in my room for a while and leaving his soap on my table and doing a lot of small things, like not switching off the fan. And I was just like, it's fine, like a friend of mine, I will forgive him for small things. But then eventually I was like, bro, like what are you doing here? Like you've been staying at my place for so long, like take care of my space better. And then he was kind of surprised because I had been so chill with him all this time. Even I was surprised because I was like, why did I become so mad at him suddenly? So I think there's an aspect to which where in that moment when I'm forgiving him and rushing to the resolution part, I don't feel anything. I don't feel like I'm doing something wrong or anything or fake, or like I genuinely feel like I have sorted this thing out. But I think it's important to pay attention to even the small annoyances. So yeah, I think Pavani has something to say.
I just had a question. Has it got anything to do with intent identification? Like, with kids, we are more mellow, we get over things, we don't kind of get angry. But in toxic relationships, we tend to dwell or get angry for a longer time. Is it because um, when the intention it's unintentionally done, we kind of process it differently? When it's intentionally, sorry, excuse my dog's barking in the back. So is it is it one of those things also? I don't know. I'm asking. Does that happen? Tarun and Aditya, you guys might answer.
Yeah, I think for me it is about trying to determine intentions. Like if someone is intentionally trying to provoke me or hurt me or manipulate me, that's different. More often than not, people don't do it with intentions, and in those cases, I just move on very quickly. I'm like, fine, it's yeah. But if it is intentional, then you have to draw a boundary, and I'm working on it. I don't think I'm there yet, where I do draw very strict boundaries where I don't let that person kind of do that again. That's something I'm working on, but for me, it is that, yeah.
Yeah, like I think I can kind of relate to it, but I feel like it's everyone has their own explanations for why they do something. If you look at the whole explanation versus justification sort of a thing, where from everyone's own point of view. They might have their upbringing, their values, their priorities for why they are maybe accidental, careless, deciding to treat my privacy or my space certain way. And if that doesn't seem to change the fact that there is a conflict here, there's some sort of a issue here where I am feeling a little bit like, okay, no, I'm hurt. So the intention thing makes it more like malice, or okay, does this person like not care? That seems like a much more easier thing to handle, in which case I'm way more. Yeah, I don't think I have issue. I don't have much of an issue there, but it's very tricky to say whether the intention thing itself is very tricky, because most people
How
who are
deep
even
do you go?
malicious, yeah, how do you know if it's like maybe I have bad intentions towards someone, but I will try to fool myself into thinking I don't have bad intentions, right? Like
Right.
it's possible for me to act in malicious ways while retaining the benefit of doubt and being like, oh, I did not mean to do that, I was just going with the flow. People do this
You
all the
justify
time.
it, right?
Yeah,
Right.
you're like, oh, I forgot my wallet here, pay for me. They didn't intentionally want you to take money from you, but then they accidentally forgot to bring their money, and even they will genuinely believe they forgot their wallet. And if it happens enough times, you have to look at a pattern of behavior to see, is this person trying to take advantage of me or not. So I have
Right.
seen a lot of cases where people leave this benefit of doubt, and they have a lot of buffer window where after you need to really be very careful to look for this person to see, is this person like showing a pattern of behavior which indicates this person is malicious. So yeah, the intent
Yeah,
thing
I
definitely
respect
opens up.
so deeply that.
Yeah, all
And
this very
also, how
relatable.
deep do you go into the other person's brain, right? Like to determine intent. Like you'll be like, how much empathy is too much empathy in a sense, uh, where you're putting yourself in that other person's shoe, and you're like, okay, these are the 100 different reasons that kind of led to this person doing this, right?
Yeah, you can literally go to their family, their past relationships. You can, if you know them really well, you can be like, okay, they're just lashing out at me because of all the other
Right.
reasons. It's not
Correct.
actually, they don't really hate me. It's just like, I'm sorry. So they're actually a nice person. But
Yes.
like, I have come up with really, really good explanations for everyone's behavior. So that just doesn't help. So
No,
the,
yeah, I so deeply resonate with that. I think Natasha has something to say.
yeah, Natasha.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was thinking about the situation which was just brought up, right? That if a child does something, then we may let go of it easily as compared to when an adult would do so. I think it may also stem from that external versus internal locus of control. You know that if a child has done something, then I mean, you cannot, I mean, it will not solve the problem by scolding the child. It may create more problems when they start crying and throwing a tantrum or something like that. Whereas in an adult, you do have some like sense of internal locus of control, where you feel that, okay, probably if I have a conversation with this person or if I express something, then they may understand better. So that sense of control over the situation would be more, I think, in terms of dealing with an adult than as compared to a child, and maybe that's the reason we behave in that way.
Yeah, I can relate to what Natasha is saying, because one of the things I analyzed here is a sense of giving agency to people, where part of maybe part of the reason why I was hesitant to get emotional and communicate was part of it is like, oh, they already know and they're trying their best to be careful. There's no point in me adding to their burdens by shouting at them and communicating my annoyance at them. They're working on it. We all have our issues. I'm accepting my friend for who they are. That's like one aspect of treating them with internal locus of control, like they have agency. The other aspect is also that there's no point in maybe telling them, because it's like I'll control situation. I'll solve the problem. I will get a new phone. I will, like, I'm problem solving mode. There's no empathy or communication mode. It's just that I am the adult in the room. Everyone else are kind of like kids, or I don't feel like I can cooperate with them and collaborate with them. So both of these seem to be at play here, the internal locus of control and external locus of control. But I definitely think it's relevant to this idea of why I don't really treat them as agents and interact with them as having free will. And the whole idea of assigning blame comes from the court of law, where we assume each of us have a free will and divine spark or something like that, and we assign the internal locus of control. But with more of reductionism and more philosophy right now, we start to be like, okay, it's an accident. We don't give them blame anymore. We can't help but not blame people, because we can see the causal chains behind everyone's actions, and doesn't seem like they're really having control. So yeah.
No, that's actually a brilliant way to put it. And I think Shrikant had a couple of messages on the chat.
Yes,
Uh,
sorry guys, I was hijacking the conversation because I couldn't talk at that time, so I just thought I'll type it out before I forget it. Yeah.
yeah, no worries, Shrikant. Like if you
I think it's a
wanna,
great thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you want to talk about it, you can talk about it. Otherwise, I'll read out your comments.
Yeah, you can go ahead. Sorry, I'm still a bit held up on it. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So I think his first comment on short circuiting our emotions. So he says we are trying to short circuit our emotions and reach the end state fast. In his personal experience, I'm trying to avoid the roller coaster of emotions to take the natural course. And his other comment on this our current conversation was, uh, I think it is take us for granted, which hurts more than take advantage of us. I think this was when we were talking about
Yeah.
people kind of
Sorry, I think I can just give a context of when I said that. So I think the first one was about, yeah, someone broke your phone or something, and why we quickly move on. And I mean, I like to think that okay, yeah, all these rational things. So okay, it was an accident. What's the point in blaming and blah blah blah. And we are very quick to go on and yeah, move forward and just end that episode, so to speak. And in that, what I've seen with myself is it's yeah, there is definitely some emotion of okay, I lost my phone or like I worked so hard and I bought it, whatever maybe, and there is a pinch or there is a pain, but I also, to be honest, don't want to address that. Like I don't want to feel that pain, and I'm trying to reach that conclusion very quickly of haha, it's okay. I mean, what could have happened? It was an accident, blah blah blah, and brush aside, and I don't really go back and revisit those emotions too. So at least in my personal experience, I've seen that I'm not ready to face my discomfort. And I also rationalize like, what's the point of it? Like, what's the point of yelling at someone or getting angry when it won't fix itself? And I'm obviously not going to ask that person to pay for it or whatever. Like, that's not who I am. What's the point in continuing this? Let's move on quickly. And like, I want to just go away from that discomfort as quickly as possible. So that, and I don't go back and revisit those emotions of like,
right.
yeah, so that's the part about first one. And I think the second one was, I think when you were talking about kids versus adults and how he was saying about, oh, I forgot my wallet and stuff like that, right? And what happens usually is we keep seeing this pattern repeat, and subconsciously, I mean, they were not doing it deliberately, but subconsciously it becomes like maybe they start forgetting the wallet more often, or it becomes for bigger things. And it's not that they're manipulating us or they're taking advantage of us. It's in some ways it becomes like they're taking us for granted, or initially they may be very thanking us a lot for buying a coffee or whatever, but later they may just come expecting us to help. And it's not like asking, but like not requesting, or like it's more like, hey, do
Right.
this for me, like almost assuming we will do it. So then it becomes more hurtful of like, oh, like our ego takes a hit of like, oh, they're
Right.
taking us for granted and stuff like that. Yeah, yes. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to bring it back to what Aditya was saying as well, right? Uh, where I deeply resonated was, in our heads, we have this causal chain of uh, things that we think has happened to lead to that particular instance of this person doing something. And then also, I resonate deeply with the adult in the room comment that you made, where yeah, it does feel a lot of times where I feel like I'm the adult in the room, and it's the other person has no control about what they're doing. So it's like I just understand. It's fine, right? Yeah, I think Bhishma had raised his hand.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short because I think we're already past time. Yeah, I think I also noticed another like thing that comes like where I feel like I need like a moral high ground to express my emotions. For instance, like um with this friend, right? Like um if let's say I had done something bad before, then somehow like again I think here I jump past. Like I'm not letting myself feel the anger because uh I feel I'm not justified to even feel it. Like let's say I did something wrong to him before, and maybe it's the past or it's not yet resolved, but it's just there. Now somehow that event is affecting the way I feel in this current instant. I think maybe it's just me, but I let that affect my emotional state a lot. Where uh, am I justify? I ask this question: am I justified to feel this way, in spite of me behaving in a bad way before? I think that creates a lot of uh, weird. Uh, like I get into these loops, or uh, uh, I just get stuck in certain ways of thinking because um, I'm not able to just take one simple step. Okay, in this instant, what I feel, irrespective of what past history or whatever we have. Somehow, trying to see the bigger picture and how where we stand is problematic in some situations. And another point is like it's easier with friends to disentangle these emotions, but with let's say someone you're more involved, like in a relationship or something, because there you also have not just the good parts, but also the not all the bad parts, but also the good parts. So it's easier for you to just forget all these bad things. And there it doesn't even feel like manipulation or malice or anything. It's just um, you just like kind of don't see the bigger picture or anything. Uh, you just see it as isolation and let things pass. And but again, that also builds resentment slowly over a long period of time, which is problematic. So I'm curious to understand like how people are able to quickly switch between even in relationships or other um, more complex emotional situations to separate um, the the present situation from the grand scheme of things. Like do people always think in bigger picture or do they think locally in in instance? How do you shift between um, both the levels? Was I making sense? I feel I
Yeah,
was kind of
like
all over the place.
now for me, I feel. I mean, at least the way I operate, I give more weightage on the bigger picture than the isolated incident. That's just how I kind of operate. I don't know the reasons or why I do it that way. Uh, it's like if there's one isolated incident, it's fine. And but if there's a pattern, like Aditya was saying, right? If there's a pattern of behavior where um, someone has wronged you multiple times, then that's something you need to look at deeper. But um, I tend to not build resentment unless there's a pattern like that. If it's like a one-off incident, I move on, I forgive. But if there's a pattern, then I do take a deeper look and try to address. Yeah, go ahead, Natasha.
Yeah, I think it depends on the situation. Like I had put one comment on the chat box also saying that like two things, right? And I would like to add on there. One is perhaps it also depends on how much value you associate perhaps with with that single incident and your relationship with the person, right? So like breaking a phone for example may be a scenario where you would naturally associate more value to your friendship than the phone incident itself. But if it is something else, right, like for example in a relationship it is a case of domestic violence, then even a single incident uh, you would associate more value there than looking at, oh, I need to continue with my relationship. So it it is somehow like I feel that it is something to do with, how much value we associate with that single incident versus the relationship which we have. Does that make sense?
But I think the complex part is that you are in a relationship because there are like a lot of good things as well, right? So it's hard to see, like, do that calculus that, hey, is it worth uh, this thing? Maybe you this thing, oh, it's just one off, it won't happen. And every time the recurring pattern as well, it's sometimes hard to disentangle. Oh, okay, it's just the situation versus it's a recurring theme.
Yeah, no, but see, when I was talking about this incident, right? Like if it is something related to say do with domestic violence, if suppose the partner slaps another partner or something like that, I mean, if I associate more value to the fact that, oh, this is something which is a hit on my self-respect, or if I associate more, like for me, that is a strict no, right? It's like a value piece that comes there. It does not agree with my ideology, then I would perhaps then decide to not go ahead with that relationship. I would associate more value to that single incident itself, and it may not be that complex for me.
Mm. Yeah, I think yeah, those incidents are very there's like a singular incident that happens, but usually I think in our day-to-day life we just see like very subtle uh violation of our boundaries or things like that
Yeah,
where
yeah,
we just let it slide and things slowly accumulate. And that is more insidious than this singular event where you can demarcate, hey, okay, this definitely crossed my boundaries.
yeah, okay.
Those events are much easier to deal with than these subtle things. And even the phone thing is a it's an example like simplified, but in our day-to-day lives, I think that's not the type of incidents we deal with. We deal with very small, uh, like like breach of
Subtle.
our boundaries or emotional disturbances, and slowly they start building up, and it's very hard to see the pattern that, oh, these are all leading to something else. And yeah, I was worried about those situations where when do you realize, okay, this is this is the line that I'm drawing for these small things which slowly build up.
Yeah, it's like a subtle negotiation, right? Like if you are drawing boundaries at every small breach of them, you can come across as being too sensitive, picky, whatever. But if you keep letting it build up, then you build resentment. So it's like negotiating on that spectrum to find the sweet spot of when you kind of uh, communicate those breaches of boundaries. I think that's a subtle art. Uh, Aditya, I think you had raised your hand.
Yeah, I think I had a point with thinking of this whole thing as like climate versus uh, weather, where emotions tend to be giving me much more local information about situation in that particular context. So the intellectual system two side seems to be the one that looks at the global uh, pattern matching, logical causal chains, linear, like trying to find the proximal cause and the deeper cause and things like that. Emotions are much more what am I feeling right now, and it yeah, this I think this is kind of why it's important to slow down and not directly jump to taking an action just because I feel something and just but then feel it fully. Be very sensitive to what emotions I am feeling because it is giving me very valuable, like the gut instinct sometimes when I, meet someone and I spend some time with them and something seems off, or I spend more time with someone and I kind of notice things on level of body language or eye contact, and these things are telling me stuff I cannot always pin down in logical explicit narratives, but then there's still important information that will help me make a decision regarding how much I want to trust them, how quickly I want to move forward. So what Bhishma is saying, I feel like it's very important to uh, look at the global picture and not get lost in the local picture. But the local picture can only be listened to if you are listened to it fully. So you shouldn't do both at once. I think the issue happened for me at least is when I try to do the global picture at the same time when my body is telling me the local picture. So when the local thing is happening, when I'm flirting with someone or vibing with someone or I'm doing something with which requires me to really be in my head, my body, be embodied, I should not be zooming out and intellectualizing it. But intellectualizing has its own time and space. That's not really that can be done without getting in the each other's way. So there's a synergy here which can work really well.
Yeah, I think the point I guess you're trying to make is be in the moment, feel what you're feeling, intellectualize it later, if I can put it that way.
That's my that's my current game plan.
Cool. Any other final thoughts? I think we can close it in the next 3-4 minutes, unless someone else has anything else.
Yeah, I've got to leave. Had a nice
Yeah,
time.
thanks a lot, Bhishma, for joining. Great questions and insights. Thanks for joining us.
Sure. Bye.
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 Any other final thoughts, anyone? This is a great discussion, by the way. Um, I have a lot to like think about. So thanks everyone for like giving all your inputs. Cool, then. I think we can close the call. Thanks for the question now and the prompt, Aditya, that sparked this discussion. This was great.
Yeah, it was great. I really had a lot of good time, fun time. Thanks everyone
Yeah.
for joining in.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Yes, have a great
Bye.
weekend.
Have a great day. Have a great Sunday. Bye.